Heavenly Father, I pray for everyone watching this video right now. May you bless them with peace, joy, and breakthroughs in their lives. Amen. Hello, my wonderful family. I am so glad and grateful to have you here with me today. Your support means the world, and I truly don't take it for granted. Before we dive into today's powerful story, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below to share your thoughts, and of course, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from this channel. The number $5 billion burned behind my eyelids every time I blinked. $5 billion. Not million, billion. The lawyer's words echoed in my skull like a broken record as I sat frozen in the mahogany-paneled conference room, surrounded by the faces of relatives who'd barely acknowledged my existence for 23 years. There must be some mistake. Aunt Victoria's voice cut through my shock like a blade. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against the table with the precision of a machine gun. Emma has no business experience, no education in finance. She's a recent graduate with an art degree, for God's sake. I wanted to defend myself, to point out that my art history degree from Northwestern came with a double major in business, but my throat felt stuffed with cotton. The leather chair beneath me seemed to shrink as 47 pairs of eyes. I'd counted them, turned toward me with expressions ranging from disbelief to pure hatred. "The will is ironclad," Mr. Hartwell, grandfather's attorney, said with the weary tone of someone who'd clearly anticipated this reaction. Theodore Blackwell was of sound mind when he revised his testament 6 months ago. Emma Catherine Blackwell inherits the entirety of Blackwell Industries, including all subsidiaries, real estate holdings, and liquid assets. The rest of the family receives the previously established trust funds, generous sums that will ensure comfortable lives for generations. Comfortable? Uncle Marcus shot to his feet, his face purpling. $20 million split between 12 family members is comfortable? When that little girl gets $5 billion. That little girl. I'd been hearing variations of that phrase my entire life. The youngest Blackwell. The quiet one. The one who spent holidays reading in corners while my cousins networked and plotted their futures around grandfather's empire. The one who'd worked summers at coffee shops instead of demanding internships at Blackwell Industries like every other family member. "Perhaps," came a new voice from the back of the room, smooth as expensive whiskey, "we should ask Emma what she thinks about all this." I turned to see a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of confident posture that suggested he belonged in rooms like this. He wore a simple black suit that probably cost more than my rent, and his green eyes held something that looked almost like amusement. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Aunt Victoria's voice could have frozen hell. "Ryan Torres. I represent the firm handling Blackwell Industries International Acquisitions. Your grandfather asked me to be present today." His eyes found mine across the room. "Emma, right? I worked closely with Theodore these past few months. He spoke about you often." The room erupted in whispers. Grandfather had never mentioned me to anyone in business. I was the family ghost, the granddaughter who showed up to mandatory holiday dinners and somehow managed to be both invisible and disappointing simultaneously. "He spoke about me?" The words came out smaller than I intended. Ryan's smile was gentle, completely at odds with the tension crackling through the air. "Constantly. He was very proud of your thesis on economic patterns in Renaissance art patronage. Said it showed him something about business he'd never considered." My heart stopped. I'd never told anyone in my family about my thesis. How could grandfather have known? "This is ridiculous," Cousin Bradley spat. "She's never shown any interest in the family business. She probably can't even balance a checkbook." "Actually," I found my voice, surprising myself with its steadiness, "I've been balancing my own books since I was 16. And for your information, my thesis analyzed how the Medici banking empire used art patronage to establish political influence and create generational wealth. The economic principles are still used in modern corporate strategy." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Aunt Victoria's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "How convenient that you suddenly have relevant expertise now that $5 billion is involved." Before I could respond, Mr. Hartwell cleared his throat. "There's more to the will that Emma needs to hear privately. I suggest the rest of the family review the trust documentation with your individual attorneys." The exodus was swift and venomous. Whispered threats about legal challenges, accusations of manipulation, promises that this wouldn't stand. Cousin after cousin filed past me without making eye contact except for Bradley, who leaned down and whispered, You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, little cousin. Money like that doesn't just change your life, it ends it. The door slammed behind him with finality that made my bones ache. That went better than expected, Ryan said, somehow managing to inject humor into the most terrifying moment of my life. Better. I stared at him in disbelief. They hate me. They want me dead. Theodore predicted this reaction exactly. That's why he spent months putting protections in place. Mr. Hartwell gathered a thick folder from his briefcase. Emma, your grandfather didn't just leave you money. He left you an empire and a mission. Welcome, by the way, to what might be the most important conversation of your life. I know you're overwhelmed, confused, probably terrified. That's exactly how your grandfather felt when he inherited Blackwell Industries at 25. The difference is, he didn't have the advantages he's given you. What do you mean, advantages? My voice sounded hollow in the suddenly empty conference room. Mr. Hartwell opened the folder, revealing documents that looked dense enough to require a law degree to understand. Your grandfather has been watching you, Emma. Not in a creepy way, he added quickly, seeing my expression. But he's been paying attention. He knew about your academic achievements, your work ethic, your character. Most importantly, he knew about your thesis. How is that possible? I never. Professor Martinez sent him a copy, Ryan interrupted gently. Your grandfather asked every university in the country to flag any student research that involved economic analysis of family dynasties. When your thesis crossed his desk, he said it was like reading his own thoughts written by someone who understood both business and human nature. The world tilted sideways. Professor Martinez knew my grandfather? Your grandfather has been cultivating relationships with academics for decades. He believed the next generation of business leaders would come from universities, not boardrooms. Mr. Hartwell slid a document across the table. This is why he chose you, Emma. Not because you're family, but because you're the only family member who proved they could think beyond personal gain. I stared at the paper. It was a copy of my thesis abstract, covered in handwritten notes in grandfather's familiar spidery handwriting. Comments like brilliant analysis of power dynamics, and this girl understands legacy filled the margins. He read my entire thesis? Multiple times. He also had his research team investigate your college employment records, your credit history, your social media presence. You're the only Blackwell family member who never posted about money, never bragged about connections, never tried to leverage the family name for personal advantage. Ryan leaned forward, his expression serious now. Emma, your cousins think you're an easy target. They're wrong. Your grandfather chose you because you're the only one who can't be corrupted by what you're inheriting. But I don't know anything about running a business empire. You know more than you think. And more importantly, you have something none of them have. Mr. Hartwell's smile was sad but proud. Integrity. Your grandfather's final letter explains everything. He handed me an envelope with my name written in grandfather's careful script. My hands shook as I opened it. My dear Emma, asterisk, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably terrified. Good. Fear will keep you alive in the coming months. Asterisk. Asterisk, I didn't choose you because you're my granddaughter. I chose you because you're the only person in this family who understands that money is a tool, not a goal. Your thesis proved you understand how power really works, not through intimidation or accumulation, but through strategy and vision. Asterisk. Asterisk, the family will try to destroy you. They'll challenge the will, spread lies about your competence, maybe even attempt physical harm. This is why I've spent the last year preparing defenses you don't even know about yet. Asterisk. Asterisk, you're not inheriting just money, Emma. You're inheriting a responsibility to use Blackwell Industries to make the world better. I failed at that for 60 years. I won't fail now. Asterisk. Asterisk, trust Ryan Torres completely. Trust no one else until you've learned to see through their motivations. And remember, you earned this not through blood, but through character. Asterisk. The real test starts now. Asterisk, love and pride. Grandfather asterisk. Asterisk P.S. Check the hidden compartment behind the portrait in my study. You'll need what's there sooner than you think. Asterisk. I read the letter twice before looking up at Ryan and Mr. Hartwell. What kind of defenses? We'll explain everything, Ryan said. But first, you need to understand what you're really up against. This isn't just about money, Emma. Blackwell Industries controls technology, real estate, and manufacturing that affects millions of lives. Your family doesn't just want the inheritance, they want the power to reshape entire economies. And they'll kill for it. Mr. Hartwell added quietly. The weight of his words settled over me like a lead blanket. 3 hours ago, I'd been Emma Blackwell, recent graduate with student loans and a job interview next week at a small museum. Now I was Emma Blackwell, target of a family fortune war that could destroy me before I even understood what I'd inherited. What's the first move? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Ryan's smile returned, sharp and approving. Now you're thinking like a Blackwell. The first move is survival. The second is learning who your real allies are. And the third move, Mr. Hartwell said, gathering his papers, is showing your family they chose the wrong target. As we prepared to leave the conference room, I caught my reflection in the polished mahogany table. The face staring back at me looked terrified but determined. Grandfather was right, I was afraid. But fear, I was beginning to realize, might be exactly what I needed to survive what was coming. The game for $5 billion had begun, and I was the prize they were all fighting to destroy. The drive to grandfather's estate should have been familiar. I'd made it dozens of times for holiday gatherings and awkward family dinners. But sitting in the passenger seat of Ryan's sleek BMW, watching the manicured suburbs of Lake Forest blur past, everything felt different. The trees looked sharper, the shadows deeper, like the world had shifted into a higher resolution that revealed details I'd been blind to my entire life. Tell me about your grandfather, Ryan said, breaking the silence that had stretched between us since leaving the law office. Not the public version, the real man. I considered his question while studying his profile. Sharp jawline, focused eyes that seemed to catch everything, hands that gripped the steering wheel with the confidence of someone accustomed to control. He was probably 30, maybe 32, which meant he'd built enough reputation to work directly with one of the world's wealthiest men, while still young enough to relate to my situation. That combination felt both reassuring and dangerous. He was lonely, I said finally. Everyone else saw the titan of industry, but I saw a man who ate dinner by himself every night in a house big enough for 20 people. He used to ask me about my classes, my friends, what books I was reading. Not because he was trying to groom me for business. He genuinely seemed interested in how I thought about things. When did you last see him? 3 months ago. Christmas dinner. The memory stabbed with unexpected sharpness. He seemed tired that day. Distracted. He asked me to walk with him in his study after dinner, which had never happened before. He wanted to know if I was happy. Ryan glanced at me. What did you tell him? The truth. That I felt like I was floating through life without purpose. Like everyone else in the family had these grand plans and inherited ambitions, but I just wanted to find something that mattered. I laughed bitterly. He said purpose usually finds us when we're ready for the responsibility. Sounds like he was preparing you. For what? I thought he meant I should figure out my career path, not that he was planning to make me the target of a family war. The weight of the afternoon was beginning to settle in my chest like a physical presence. Ryan, can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you helping me? You barely know me, and this situation could destroy your career if you pick the wrong side. His smile was small but genuine. Your grandfather saved my life once. Not metaphorically, literally. I was a scholarship kid from the South Side who got into Northwestern on academic merit, but couldn't afford to stay. Theodore funded my entire education, including law school, with no strings attached. He said talent shouldn't be wasted because of circumstances beyond someone's control. Something in his voice made me study his face more carefully. There's more to it than that. There always is. He pulled through the stone gates of grandfather's estate, past the uniformed guards who nodded respectfully. Your grandfather told me something the last time we met. He said the family would try to corrupt me, bribe me, threaten me. But he also said if I stayed loyal to you, I'd be protecting the only person in the Blackwell line worth saving. The compliment should have felt good, but instead it made my stomach clench with anxiety. What if he was wrong about me? What if I can't handle this? Then you'll learn. Or you'll adapt. Or you'll find another way forward. Ryan parked in the circular drive in front of the mansion's imposing entrance. Your grandfather didn't choose someone weak, Emma. He chose someone untested. The estate looked different in the fading afternoon light. Larger somehow, more intimidating. I'd always thought of it as grandfather's house, but now it belonged to me. The responsibility felt crushing. The staff knows about the will, Ryan said as we walked toward the front door. Mrs. Chun, the housekeeper, has been with your grandfather for 30 years. She's completely trustworthy. The groundskeeping crew, the security team, the household staff, They're all people your grandfather vetted personally. How can you be sure? Because he fired anyone with family connections 6 months ago. Anyone who might have divided loyalties. The front door opened before we could knock. Mrs. Chun stood there with the same warm smile she'd worn throughout my childhood visits, but her eyes held a sadness that hadn't been there at Christmas. "Miss Emma," she said softly, "I'm so sorry for your loss. And congratulations on your inheritance." Mr. Theodore was very proud of his decision. "You knew?" I asked as she led us through the marble foyer toward grandfather's study. "He told me everything. He wanted to make sure you'd have at least one person in this house you could trust completely." Mrs. Chin paused outside the study door. "He also wanted me to give you this." She handed me a small key, old and ornate, warm from being carried in her pocket. "What's it for?" "The hidden compartment he mentioned in his letter. Behind the portrait of his father." Her expression grew serious. "Miss Emma, there are things in there that will frighten you. But Mr. Theodore said you needed to know the truth about your family before you could protect yourself from them." Ryan and I exchanged glances. "What kind of truth?" "The kind that explains why your cousins are dangerous and your aunts are desperate." Mrs. Chin opened the study door. "The kind that shows you why your grandfather spent years planning for this day." The study looked exactly as I remembered it: rich mahogany bookshelves, leather chairs arranged around a massive desk, and the portrait of great-grandfather Jameson Blackwell dominating the wall behind the desk. But now, knowing it hid secrets, the room felt different, charged with possibility and threat. "I'll leave you to discover what you need to know," Mrs. Chin said. "But Miss Emma, whatever you find in there, remember that your grandfather loved you enough to trust you with it." After she left, Ryan and I stood in the silence of the study, staring at the portrait. Great-grandfather Jameson looked stern and unforgiving, painted in the style of 1920s robber barons who built empires through pure will and questionable morality. "Are you ready for this?" Ryan asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." I inserted the key into what looked like a decorative detail in the frame's corner. With a soft click, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a hidden safe behind the portrait. Inside were dozens of file folders, USB drives, photographs, and documents that looked both official and damning. Ryan whistled low under his breath as I pulled out the first folder. "Financial records," I said, flipping through pages of spreadsheets and bank statements. "But these account numbers, they're not Blackwell Industries accounts." "Look at the names on the accounts," Ryan said, reading over my shoulder. "Victoria Blackwell Sterling, Marcus Blackwell, Bradley Blackwell." Account after account in family names, filled with transactions that didn't match their declared incomes or the trust fund distributions they were supposed to be receiving. "They've been stealing from the company," I breathed. "For years, by the looks of it." Ryan pulled out another folder. "Emma, look at this." The second folder contained photographs, surveillance images of family members meeting with people I didn't recognize in parking garages, restaurants, hotel lobbies. The timestamps showed these meetings had been happening for months. "Who are these people?" Ryan's face had gone pale. "Some of them work for Blackwell Industries competitors. Others," he paused, studying a photo more closely. "Others are corporate attorneys who specialize in hostile takeovers." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. They've been planning to steal the company, or destroy it if they couldn't control it. Ryan pulled out a thick document labeled Contingency Plan, Project Succession. "Your grandfather knew, Emma. He's been documenting everything." I opened the document with shaking hands. Page after page of evidence, recorded phone conversations, financial forensics, timeline analysis of family meetings that corresponded with suspicious business decisions. At the bottom was a handwritten note in grandfather's spidery script. "Asterisk Emma, by the time you read this, they will already be moving against you. The evidence in this safe will protect you legally, but you need to be smarter than they are to survive physically. Trust Ryan. Trust Mrs. Chun. Trust your instincts. And remember, they underestimated me for 60 years. Don't let them underestimate you. T.B*. Physically." My voice came out as a whisper. Ryan was already pulling out his phone. "We need to leave. Now. If they know about the safe." The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the study in eerie red shadows. In the distance, I could hear the sound of cars in the driveway, multiple vehicles arriving fast. "The back entrance," Ryan said, stuffing documents into his jacket. "Mrs. Chin showed me the service corridors when I was here last month." But as we moved toward the study door, I heard voices in the hallway. Familiar voices. She has to be here, Uncle Marcus was saying. The security system shows her car in the driveway. Search every room, Aunt Victoria replied. And find that safe. Father was too paranoid to leave everything to lawyers. My blood turned to ice. They weren't just here to intimidate me. They were here to take the evidence that could destroy them and eliminate the only person who knew about it. Ryan grabbed my arm, his grip urgent but gentle. The window. We can climb down to the garden. But as he moved toward the window, I saw movement in the shadows outside. More people. More cars. They'd surrounded the house. Ryan, I whispered. I think my family just tried to kill me. His eyes met mine in the red emergency lighting, and I saw the exact moment he realized the same thing I had. This wasn't a family dispute about money anymore. This was war. The sound of splintering would echoed through the mansion as someone kicked in the front door. Ryan's hand found mine in the darkness, his palm warm and steady against my ice-cold fingers. How many ways out of this room? He whispered. I forced myself to think past the terror clouding my brain. The main door, the window, and... I paused, remembering childhood games of hide-and-seek. There's a servant's passage behind the bookshelf. It connects to the kitchen. Can you find it in the dark? Before I could answer, footsteps thundered up the main staircase. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. These weren't just angry relatives anymore. They'd brought help. Emma! Aunt Victoria's voice carried from the hallway, sickly sweet with false concern. Darling, we know you're here. We just want to talk about the will. There are things about your grandfather you need to understand. Ryan pressed his mouth close to my ear. They're lying. If they just wanted to talk, they wouldn't have cut the power and surrounded the house. I knew he was right, but hearing my aunt's voice, the same voice that had read me bedtime stories when I was 5, made my chest tight with confusion. How had the people who'd raised me become threats I needed to escape from? The bookshelf, I whispered, pulling Ryan toward the far wall. Third shelf from the bottom, behind the leather-bound Shakespeare collection. My fingers found the hidden latch just as the study door rattled. Someone was testing the lock. It secured from the inside, came a voice I didn't recognize. Male, professional, dangerous. Want me to break it down? Not yet, Uncle Marcus replied. Emma, sweetheart, we found your car in the driveway. We know you're in the house somewhere. Your grandfather filled your head with lies about us, didn't he? Made you think we were the enemy. The hidden panel swung open silently, revealing a narrow passage that smelled of dust and decades-old secrets. Ryan squeezed through first, then helped me into the cramped space. As I pulled the panel closed behind us, I heard the study door explode inward. Search everything, Aunt Victoria ordered. The safe, the desk, every file cabinet. And check for hidden passages. Father was obsessed with secret exits. The passage was pitch black and barely wide enough for one person. Ryan moved ahead of me, his phone's flashlight creating a narrow cone of visibility. The walls pressed in on both sides, and I had to fight down a surge of claustrophobia as we navigated corners and descended a steep staircase I'd forgotten existed. Where does this lead? Ryan's voice was barely audible. Kitchen pantry. But Ryan. I grabbed his jacket, stopping him. If they're searching the house systematically, they'll find us anyway. We need a plan. He turned back to me, and in the phone's dim light, I could see the intensity in his eyes. Your grandfather prepared for this scenario. The evidence we found, it's not just about embezzlement. It's about something much bigger. What do you mean? The meetings in those photographs, the competitor contacts. Your family isn't just stealing from Blackwell Industries. They're selling it piece by piece to foreign investors. If they gain control, they'll strip the company for parts and sell the technology to the highest bidders. The implications hit me like a physical blow. How many people work for Blackwell Industries? Globally, about 40,000 employees. Plus their families, suppliers, communities that depend on the company. Ryan's expression was grim. Your grandfather didn't just leave you money, Emma. He left you responsibility for all those lives. Above us, I could hear systematic searching. Furniture being moved, walls being tapped, doors being forced open. They were getting closer. There's something else, Ryan continued quietly. Your grandfather suspected one of the family members was planning to have you killed after the will reading. That's why he arranged for me to be there today, as a witness and protection. Killed. The word felt surreal coming out of my mouth. These are people who gave me Christmas presents, who came to my high school graduation, people who just lost access to $5 billion because you exist. Ryan's hand found my face in the darkness, his thumb brushing across my cheek with surprising gentleness. Emma, I need you to understand something. The moment you accept this inheritance, you're not just Emma Blackwell anymore. You're a threat to their survival. The footsteps above us were getting louder, more urgent. We had minutes, maybe less, before they found the hidden passage. What are my options? You could give up the inheritance. Walk away, let them have the company, disappear somewhere safe. Ryan's voice was carefully neutral, but I caught something underneath it. Disappointment? Fear? And let 40,000 people lose their jobs when the company gets sold for scrap? Or you could fight. Accept that your life just changed forever and do everything necessary to protect what your grandfather built. His hand was still on my face, and I realized how close we were in the narrow passage. But Emma, if you choose to fight, there's no going back. They'll never stop coming for you. Through the walls, I could hear Aunt Victoria's voice getting closer. Check the kitchen next. She might have tried to leave through the service entrance. This was it, the moment that would define everything that came after. I could surrender the inheritance and spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been, or I could accept the responsibility grandfather had entrusted to me and fight for something bigger than myself. But looking at Ryan in the dim light, seeing the way he was watching me with a mixture of hope and fear, I realized something else was happening. Somewhere between the lawyer's office and this terrifying moment, I'd started trusting him completely. More than trusting, I was beginning to care about him in a way that felt both inevitable and dangerous. If I choose to fight, I whispered, will you help me? Until the end. His response was immediate and certain. Even if it destroys your career, your safety. Emma. His voice was soft but fierce. Your grandfather didn't just ask me to protect his granddaughter. He asked me to protect the woman he believed could change everything. I've spent 3 months getting to know that woman through his stories and 30 minutes getting to know her in person. He was right about you. Something shifted between us in that moment. A recognition, an understanding, a promise that went beyond the immediate crisis. I found myself leaning closer to him, drawn by something I couldn't name and didn't have time to analyze. There's a car in the garage, I said, making my choice. A 1967 Mustang that grandfather restored. He used to let me drive it around the estate when I was 16. If we can reach it. The garage is on the opposite side of the house from where they entered. We might have a chance. Above us, someone had found the kitchen. Cabinet doors were slamming, chairs being moved, the methodical sound of a thorough search. Emma, before we do this, there's something your grandfather told me that you need to know. Ryan's expression was troubled. The family's desperation isn't just about money. There's a board meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. If you don't appear to claim control of the company within 72 hours of the will reading, the inheritance defaults to a family trust controlled by your aunts and uncles. What? The words hit me like ice water. The lawyer didn't mention any time limit. Because your grandfather asked him not to. He wanted you to have tonight to process everything before you understood the urgency. Ryan's grip on my hand tightened. Emma, if we don't get you to that board meeting, you lose everything. And more importantly, so do the 40,000 people counting on Blackwell Industries to survive. The searching sounds above us had moved toward the pantry entrance. We were out of time. The passage exit is behind a false cabinet, I whispered, moving deeper into the darkness. But once we open it, we're committed. No hiding, no changing our minds. Are you ready? I thought about grandfather's letter, about the pride in his voice when he'd talked about my thesis, about the responsibility he'd entrusted to me. I thought about 40,000 employees who didn't know their futures hung in the balance, and about the family members upstairs who were willing to commit murder to maintain their power. But mostly, I thought about the man beside me in the darkness, who'd chosen to risk everything to help someone he barely knew because he believed in something larger than himself. I'm ready, I said, and meant it. Ryan squeezed my hand. Then let's go steal back your inheritance. The cabinet swung open silently, revealing the moonlit kitchen beyond. Empty for the moment, but voices echoed from the direction of the main staircase. We had seconds to reach the back door before they completed their sweep of the ground floor. But as we stepped into the kitchen, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Through the window, in the glow of the estate's security lights, I could see at least 6 people positioned around the grounds. Professional surveillance, military-style positioning. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was a coordinated operation designed to eliminate a threat to their survival. And the threat was me. The moonlight streaming through the kitchen windows revealed what we were truly up against. The figures positioned around the estate weren't family members or even hired security. They moved with the precise coordination of military professionals. Night vision equipment, tactical gear, communication devices that glinted in the darkness. Jesus, Ryan breathed beside me. Your family called in specialists. Through the window, I watched one of the figures speak into a throat mic, then gesture toward the house. A response came through their earpiece, and they shifted position with fluid efficiency. These people weren't here to intimidate or negotiate. They were here to eliminate a problem permanently. The garage is 200 yards, I whispered, studying the patrol patterns. But they'll see us the moment we step outside. Not necessarily. Ryan pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. Your grandfather showed me something last month when I was here for a meeting. Emergency protocol he'd installed after some corporate espionage attempts. What kind of emergency protocol? Before he could answer, the kitchen door from the main hallway burst open. Cousin Bradley stood silhouetted against the hall light, and for a split second, our eyes met across the room. His expression shifted from surprise to something much darker. Found them, he shouted, reaching for something inside his jacket. Ryan grabbed my hand and yanked me toward the back door, just as Bradley's shout brought running footsteps from multiple directions. We crashed through the exit into the cool night air, and immediately spotlights blazed to life around the estate grounds. This way. Ryan pulled me toward what looked like solid darkness between two garden sheds. Behind us, voices erupted in coordinated chaos. Targets are mobile, heading southeast toward the gardens. Cut off the garage access. Authorization for lethal force if they resist. Lethal force. The words hammered in my skull as we ran through shadows that felt far too thin for concealment. These people, my own family, had authorized my murder. Here. Ryan stopped beside what looked like a decorative stone well, but his hands found hidden controls in the darkness. Your grandfather's emergency system. He had escape routes installed throughout the property. A section of ground slid away, revealing a tunnel entrance with built-in lighting. We dropped into the passage just as flashlight beams swept the area we'd been standing in seconds before. How did you know about this? I gasped as we moved through the underground corridor. Your grandfather was paranoid about corporate warfare. He said the estate was as much fortress as home. Ryan's voice echoed strangely in the confined space. This tunnel connects to a safe house about half a mile from the main property. Vehicle, supplies, secure communications. The tunnel was wider than the servants' passage, but still felt claustrophobic with danger pressing in from above. Our footsteps seemed impossibly loud despite the soft flooring, and every few seconds I caught myself holding my breath, listening for sounds of pursuit. Ryan, the board meeting tomorrow. What exactly happens if I don't show up? Control of Blackwell Industries transfers to a voting trust managed by the senior family members. They get everything, the company, the subsidiaries, the international holdings. His pace quickened as we reached a junction in the tunnel. But Emma, there's something about that trust your grandfather discovered. Something he didn't want to put in writing. What? The trust isn't just a family arrangement. Your aunts and uncles have already negotiated sale contracts with 3 different foreign conglomerates. The moment they gain control, Blackwell Industries gets carved up and sold. The technology, the manufacturing capabilities, even the defense contracts, everything goes to the highest bidders. The implications hit me like physical blows. Defense contracts? Blackwell Industries holds patents for satellite communication systems, advanced materials for aerospace applications, even some classified military technology. In the wrong hands, that information could compromise national security. Above us, I could hear muffled sounds, vehicles moving, people shouting coordinates, the systematic search expanding. They knew we'd escaped the house, but the tunnel was giving us precious time. Your grandfather didn't just leave you a business empire, Ryan continued. He left you a weapon that could destabilize global technology markets if it falls into the wrong hands. The tunnel began to slope upward, and ahead I could see another entrance. But Ryan stopped before we reached it, his hand on my arm. Emma, before we go any further, I need to tell you something. His voice had changed, become more vulnerable. Your grandfather asked me to protect you, and I will. But what's happening between us? This isn't just about duty anymore. In the dim tunnel lighting, his face was half in shadow, but I could see the intensity in his eyes. The connection I'd felt in the mansion's hidden passage was stronger now, sharpened by shared danger, and the realization that we might not survive the night. I know, I said softly. I feel it too. This complicates everything. If my judgment gets clouded because I'm falling for you, then we'll be careful. But Ryan, if we're going to die tonight, I'd rather die fighting beside someone I trust completely than hiding from someone I barely know. His smile was brief but real. Your grandfather said you were stronger than you looked. I'm learning that might be true. We reached the tunnel exit, which opened into what looked like a garden shed, but was actually camouflage for a sophisticated safe house. Computer equipment, communication devices, a small arsenal of defensive weapons, and, most importantly, keys hanging on a board near a door that presumably led to the promised vehicle. Ryan immediately went to the computers while I examined the weapons with hands that shook slightly. Handguns, rifles, equipment I didn't recognize but that looked expensive and dangerous. Emma, you need to see this. Ryan's voice was tight with alarm. I joined him at the computer screen, which showed a grid of surveillance feeds from around the estate. The tactical team had spread out in a professional search pattern, but more concerning were the additional vehicles arriving at the main gate. Cars I recognized from family gatherings, but also dark SUVs with government license plates. Who are those people? I'm not sure, but your family just got reinforcements. Ryan pulled up another screen showing financial market data. Emma, look at this. Blackwell Industries stock has been under massive short-selling pressure for the past month. Someone's been betting against the company's survival. Meaning someone with inside information has been positioning to profit from the company's destruction. Your family hasn't just been planning to steal the inheritance. They've been planning to destroy Blackwell Industries and make money on its collapse. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just about greed or family politics. This was about systematically destroying everything grandfather had built while profiting from the wreckage. The board meeting, I said, pieces clicking together. If they can prevent me from claiming control and then force the company into bankruptcy, they make billions on their short positions while selling off the valuable assets to their foreign contacts. Ryan's expression was grim. Emma, this isn't just about your inheritance anymore. This is about corporate warfare on a scale that could affect global markets. Through the safe house's bulletproof windows, I could see flashlight beams moving through the gardens, getting closer to our position. We had minutes before they found the tunnel exit. What's our next move? Ryan grabbed a set of keys from the board. We get you to the city, find somewhere safe to spend the night, and make sure you're at that board meeting tomorrow morning. Once you claim control of the company, the transfer trust becomes invalid and your family loses their leverage. And if they find us before then we fight. He handed me one of the handguns, checking to make sure it was loaded. Emma, I need you to understand something. After tonight, your life will never be normal again. You'll have enemies you can't see, threats you can't predict, responsibilities that will keep you awake at night. I took the gun, surprised by how natural it felt in my hands. Are you trying to talk me out of this? I'm trying to make sure you know what you're choosing. His hand covered mine on the weapon. Because once we walk out that door, there's no going back to being just Emma Blackwell, recent graduate with student loans. Outside, the search patterns were getting closer. Vehicle engines rumbled in the distance, more reinforcements arriving, more obstacles between us and safety. But as I looked at Ryan in the glow of the computer screens, seeing the way he was watching me with equal parts protectiveness and admiration, I realized something had fundamentally shifted in my understanding of myself. The scared girl who'd sat in the lawyer's office was gone. In her place was someone harder, more focused, capable of making decisions that would have terrified me 6 hours ago. I stopped being just Emma Blackwell the moment I read grandfather's letter, I said. Now I'm someone with 40,000 employees counting on me, and someone with a very good reason to make my family regret underestimating me. Ryan's smile was proud and fierce. Then let's go show them exactly what kind of Blackwell you really are. But as he moved toward the exit, alarms began blaring throughout the safe house. Red lights flashed, and a computerized voice announced, "Perimeter breach detected. Multiple hostiles approaching from all vectors. Lockdown protocol activated." Through the windows, I could see figures surrounding the building. We weren't escaping, we were trapped. The lockdown system sealed us inside the safe house with the efficiency of a vault closing. Steel shutters slammed down over the windows, emergency lighting bathed everything in harsh white glare, and the air filtration system kicked in with a hum that suggested we might be here for a while. How long will this hold them? I asked, watching Ryan examine the security monitors. Depends on what kind of equipment they brought. His fingers flew across the control panel, cycling through different camera angles. The safe house was designed to withstand corporate espionage attempts, not military-grade assault. On the screens, I could see the tactical team setting up what looked like serious equipment. Devices I didn't recognize, but that clearly weren't standard security gear. They worked with the calm efficiency of people who'd done this before, and that thought made my stomach clench with fresh terror. Ryan, who are these people? Real tactical teams don't just show up for family inheritance disputes. He paused in his monitoring, and something flickered across his face, an expression I couldn't quite read. Your family has connections you don't know about. Corporate security firms, military contractors, people who handle problems discreetly. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. He turned back to the screens, but I caught the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided meeting my eyes. A new alarm joined the first one, and the computer announced. Exterior breach attempted. Defensive measures engaging. Through the monitors, I watched as hidden systems activated around the safe house perimeter. Floodlights blazed to life, revealing the full scope of what we were facing. At least 12 people in tactical gear, 3 vehicles that looked more like military transports than civilian cars, and equipment that definitely wasn't standard corporate security. Jesus, I breathed. This looks like a military operation. Because it is. Ryan's voice was quiet, resigned. Emma, there are things about your grandfather's business that you don't understand yet. Blackwell Industries isn't just a normal corporation. What do you mean? Before he could answer, one of the exterior cameras sparked and went dark. Then another. They were systematically disabling our surveillance, which meant they had blueprints of the safe house systems. How would they know the camera locations? I asked. Ryan was silent for several long seconds, studying the remaining monitors with an intensity that felt wrong somehow. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, more careful, more controlled. Emma, I need to tell you something. About why I'm really here. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. What do you mean, why you're really here? Your grandfather didn't just ask me to protect you. He didn't just fund my education out of kindness. Ryan turned to face me, and I saw something in his eyes that looked like regret. I work for the Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I've been investigating Blackwell Industries for money laundering and illegal weapons technology transfers for the past 18 months. The words hit me like physical blows. You're a federal agent? I'm a lawyer who specializes in corporate financial crimes. Your grandfather approached my agency last year with evidence that someone inside his company was selling classified technology to foreign governments. He asked for help investigating his own family. Everything tilted sideways. The safe house felt like it was spinning around me as I tried to process what he was saying. You've been lying to me this entire time? Not lying. Protecting. Ryan stepped toward me, hands raised in a placating gesture. Emma, your grandfather suspected the family conspiracy, but he needed federal resources to prove it. He asked us to place someone close to the investigation. Someone close to me. The betrayal felt like drowning. You've been watching me, investigating me, pretending to. I couldn't finish the sentence. The feelings between us are real, Ryan said urgently. That wasn't part of the mission, Emma. That was never supposed to happen. I backed away from him, my hand instinctively moving to the weapon he'd given me earlier. How do I know anything you've told me is true? How do I know you're not working with them? Because if I were working with your family, you'd already be dead. His voice was raw with something that sounded like pain. Emma, please. Let me explain. On the monitors, the tactical team had moved closer to the building. They were setting up what looked like cutting equipment, preparing to breach the walls directly. We had minutes before they reached us, and I was having this conversation with someone who'd just admitted to lying about his entire identity. Start talking, I said, keeping my distance. And if I think you're lying? Your grandfather contacted my agency 14 months ago with evidence that someone was using Blackwell Industries to launder money for international arms dealers. Not just selling technology, facilitating weapons transfers to countries under trade embargo. Ryan's words came out in a rush. The financial trail led back to family members, but he needed help gathering evidence that would stand up in court. So you've been investigating my family for over a year? Yes. But Emma, we found something worse than money laundering. Your family isn't just selling technology to foreign buyers. They're selling it to terrorist organizations. The satellite communication systems, the advanced materials, even some biotech research. They've been operating a shadow network inside Blackwell Industries for years. The scope of it was staggering. Not just corporate greed, but actual treason. National security violations that could get people killed on a massive scale. And my grandfather knew? He suspected, but he couldn't prove it without help. That's why he arranged for me to work with him directly, why he revised his will to give you control. He was trying to stop them before they could complete some kind of major transaction. On the monitors, sparks flew as the tactical team began cutting through the exterior walls. The safe house's defensive systems were holding, but barely. What kind of major transaction? Ryan hesitated, and I saw him make some kind of internal decision. There's a sale scheduled for tomorrow night. Your family has arranged to transfer the crown jewel of Blackwell Industries' defense technology, a quantum encryption system that could make any military communications network virtually unbreakable, to a consortium of buyers that includes at least 2 nations currently hostile to the United States. How much money are we talking about? $12 billion. Split between your family members and their foreign contacts. Ryan's expression was grim. Emma, if that technology transfer happens, it could shift the balance of global military power. Your grandfather left you the company because you're the only person who can stop it. The cutting sounds were getting louder, closer. Whatever defensive measures the safe house had, they weren't going to hold much longer. Why should I trust you? I asked. You've been lying to me since the moment we met. Because I'm about to risk my career, my safety, and probably my life to keep you alive. Ryan moved to another control panel, fingers flying across switches. Your grandfather left instructions for this scenario. If the safe house was compromised, there's one more escape route. What kind of escape route? Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone and made a call. This is Agent Torres. I need immediate extraction for a federal witness. Location is compromised. Hostiles are breaching the perimeter. A pause. Yes, sir. I understand the political complications. Do it anyway. Agent Torres. Not Ryan Torres, corporate lawyer. Agent Torres, federal investigator who'd been playing a role since the moment I met him. Emma, he said after ending the call, I know you don't trust me anymore. But right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and people who will torture you for information before they kill you. Through the monitors, I could see that they'd nearly breached the outer wall. In the distance, new lights were approaching, vehicles moving fast toward the estate. Who did you call? Federal backup. But they're at least 10 minutes out, and we'll be dead in 5 if we stay here. Ryan moved to what looked like a solid wall, pressing his hand against a concealed scanner. Your grandfather's final contingency. A tunnel that leads to an airstrip 2 miles from here. An airstrip? Private jet, federal protection, safe house in another state until we can coordinate taking down the entire network. The wall slid open, revealing another tunnel, this one clearly designed for high-speed evacuation. Emma, I know I've shattered your trust, but if you want to live long enough to save those 40,000 employees and prevent a technology transfer that could get American soldiers killed, you need to come with me now. The sound of cutting had stopped. Through the monitors, I could see the tactical team preparing to breach the interior. They'd be inside the safe house within minutes. But looking at Ryan, Agent Torres, in the harsh emergency lighting, I realized something devastating. Despite the lies, despite the manipulation, despite learning that our entire relationship had started as a federal investigation, I still felt that connection to him. Still trusted the man I'd seen protecting me. Still believed in the sincerity I'd heard in his voice when he talked about falling for me. Which meant either my judgment was completely compromised, or there was something real underneath all the deception. If I go with you, I said quietly, and this is all some elaborate setup to get me somewhere isolated, then I'll have destroyed my career and committed multiple federal crimes for nothing. His eyes met mine across the safe house, and I saw the same intensity I'd felt in the mansion's hidden passage. Emma, I never meant for this to happen. The feelings, the connection, that was never part of the plan. But it's real, and it's the reason I'm willing to sacrifice everything to keep you safe. Outside, something exploded. The safe house shook, and alarms screamed as the main entrance was breached. Time's up, Ryan said. Choose, Emma. Trust me one more time, or take your chances with the people trying to kill you. I could hear voices in the outer corridor of the safe house. Familiar voices shouting orders, coordinating the search. Uncle Marcus. Cousin Bradley. People who'd known me my entire life, now hunting me like an animal. But I could also hear something else. Helicopter rotors in the distance, getting closer. Either Ryan's backup was arriving, or this situation was about to get much worse. If we do this, I said, making my decision, I want the truth. All of it. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more federal agent bullshit. Deal. Ryan's relief was visible. But Emma, once you know everything, once you understand the full scope of what your family has been doing, there's no going back to the life you had before. That life ended the moment I inherited $5 billion and a target on my back. I moved toward the tunnel entrance. Let's go stop a terrorist conspiracy. But as we entered the escape route, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Through the safe house's communication system, a voice I recognized but had never heard sound so cold. Emma, darling, this is Aunt Victoria. We know you can hear us. And we know Agent Torres has been filling your head with lies about your loving family. But sweetheart, there's something about your precious grandfather that your federal friend hasn't told you yet. Something that's going to change everything you think you know about why you're really here. The tunnel stretched ahead of us, dark and uncertain. Behind us, the people who'd raised me were promising revelations that would shatter whatever was left of my understanding of the truth. And beside me, the man I'd begun to love had just admitted that our entire relationship was built on a lie designed to manipulate me into federal cooperation. But as we ran through the darkness toward an uncertain future, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt like power. I was done being anyone's victim. The escape tunnel was longer than the first one, stretching through absolute darkness broken only by emergency lighting every 50 feet. Our footsteps echoed with hollow urgency as we ran toward whatever lay ahead, but Aunt Victoria's words followed us like poison in the air. What did she mean about my grandfather? I asked as we navigated a sharp turn in the tunnel. Ryan's breathing was labored from our pace, but I caught the hesitation before he answered. I don't know. Your family has been spreading disinformation to discredit the investigation. That's not an answer. I grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. No more lies, Ryan. What aren't you telling me about my grandfather? In the dim emergency lighting, his face looked haggard, older than his 30-something years. Emma, there are aspects of the investigation that are classified above my clearance level. Things my superiors haven't shared with me. But you suspect something. I suspect everything. That's what this job teaches you. He started moving again, but his pace was slower, more reluctant. Your grandfather approached federal agencies, yes. But Emma, billionaires don't usually cooperate with government investigations unless they have something to hide themselves. The implication hit me like ice water. You think he was involved in the illegal technology transfers? I think your grandfather was a brilliant man who played a very long game. And I think the game might be more complex than any of us understand. Ahead, I could see light. Real light, not the eerie glow of emergency systems. The tunnel was ending, but instead of relief, I felt dread building in my chest. Everything I'd learned in the past 8 hours was built on trust in my grandfather's motives. If that foundation was cracked, we emerged into what looked like a private hangar, with a sleek jet waiting on a small runway. But there were also people waiting, men in suits who looked too professional to be family security, too official to be corporate bodyguards. Agent Torres, one of them called out as we approached. You're late for extraction. Circumstances were complicated, Ryan replied, but something in his tone had changed. More formal, more distant. The lead agent studied me with clinical interest. Ms. Blackwell, I'm Agent Davidson, Financial Crimes Task Force. We need to debrief you immediately about your grandfather's activities. What activities? I looked between Ryan and the new agent, sensing undercurrents I didn't understand. The activities Agent Torres was instructed not to discuss with you until you were in federal custody. Agent Davidson's smile was cold and professional. Ms. Blackwell, your grandfather wasn't just investigating illegal technology transfers. He was orchestrating them. The world tilted sideways again. That's impossible. Theodore Blackwell has been the central figure in an international arms-dealing network for over a decade. The evidence Agent Torres helped gather proves your grandfather was selling classified American technology to foreign governments, terrorist organizations, and private military contractors. Davidson pulled out a tablet, showing financial records that looked devastatingly official. The inheritance he left you isn't just money, Ms. Blackwell. It's the operational control of a criminal empire worth hundreds of billions of dollars. I turned to Ryan, desperate for him to contradict what I was hearing. Tell me he's lying. Ryan's expression was pure anguish. Emma, I couldn't tell you. Not until we had you somewhere safe, where you couldn't run or try to warn anyone. Warn anyone? The betrayal was complete now, absolute. You think I'm part of this? We think you're the key to dismantling it. Agent Davidson stepped closer, and I realized the other agents had positioned themselves around us. Not protection, containment. Your grandfather's network can't function without the legitimate corporate structure of Blackwell Industries. You can help us destroy it from the inside, or you can go to prison as an accessory to international arms trafficking. The hangar felt like it was spinning around me. Everyone I'd trusted was lying. Everyone who claimed to be helping me was manipulating me. The grandfather who'd chosen me, the federal agent who'd claimed to be falling in love with me, the family members who'd raised me. All of them were playing games with my life for reasons I couldn't even comprehend. Emma, Ryan said quietly, please let me explain. Explain what? That you've been lying about everything since the moment we met? That my grandfather was a criminal? That my inheritance is blood money? My voice was rising, echoing in the hangar. Or maybe you want to explain how falling in love with me was never part of the plan, but somehow it happened anyway while you were building a federal case to destroy my life. It did happen anyway, Ryan said fiercely. Emma, everything I've told you about my feelings, that's real. The rest was a mission, but what's between us is built on lies and manipulation and federal investigation. I backed away from him, from all of them. How do I know any of it was real? How do I know you didn't sleep with other targets during other investigations? The hurt that flashed across Ryan's face might have been genuine, but I couldn't trust my ability to read him anymore. I couldn't trust anything. Ms. Blackwell, Agent Davidson interrupted. We need your cooperation to prevent a major technology transfer scheduled for tomorrow night. $12 billion worth of quantum encryption technology that could destabilize global military communications. Help us stop it, and you can walk away from this with immunity and witness protection. And if I don't help you, then you'll be prosecuted as a knowing participant in your grandfather's criminal network. The evidence is overwhelming. Financial records, communication intercepts, witness testimony. You'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. The choice was no choice at all. Cooperate with the people who'd lied to me and manipulated me, or go to prison for crimes I didn't even know about. Help destroy the only legacy my grandfather had left me, or lose my freedom entirely. But as I looked around the hangar, at the federal agents who saw me as either an asset or a threat, at the man who'd claimed to love me while building a case against my family, at the private jet that would take me away from everything I'd ever known, I realized something that cut deeper than betrayal or fear. I was completely alone. The family that raised me wanted me dead. The grandfather who chose me had left me a criminal empire. The government that claimed to protect me saw me as a tool. And the man I'd started to love had been investigating me from the beginning. I need time to think, I said. Unfortunately, time is something we don't have. Agent Davidson checked his watch. The technology transfer happens in 18 hours. If we're going to stop it, we need to move now. Through the hangar's windows, I could see vehicles approaching in the distance. Fast, multiple cars, heading directly for the airstrip. Who is that? Ryan demanded, moving to the window. Agent Davidson cursed under his breath. How did they find this location? Because, came a familiar voice from the hangar entrance, they've been tracking federal communications for months. Uncle Marcus walked into the hangar flanked by the tactical team from the estate. But now they weren't just family security. These were professionals with serious weapons, and they moved with the confidence of people who held all the cards. Hello, Emma, Uncle Marcus said with a smile that made my skin crawl. I think it's time you learned the truth about what your dear grandfather really left you. Agent Davidson reached for his weapon, but stopped when red laser dots appeared on his chest. The federal agents were outnumbered and outgunned. Their extraction turned into a trap. Now then, Uncle Marcus continued conversationally, Agent Torres has been feeding you a very interesting story about federal investigations and international arms dealing. Some of it is even true. But the part he left out is the most important part of all. Which is, my voice sounded hollow even to myself. Your grandfather wasn't selling technology to foreign governments, dear child. He was selling it to us. To the United States government. Black budget operations, off-the-books technology transfers, weapons development that Congress could never officially approve. Uncle Marcus's smile widened. Your precious grandfather was the CIA's most valuable private contractor for the past 15 years. The hangar fell silent except for the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. Emma, Ryan said urgently, don't listen to him. He's lying to confuse you. Am I? Uncle Marcus pulled out a tablet similar to the one Agent Davidson had shown me, but these documents looked different. Official seals, classified markings, authorization codes that looked authentic. Agent Torres, perhaps you'd like to explain to my niece why the Treasury Department's investigation into Blackwell Industries was actually a cover operation designed to identify and eliminate witnesses to the CIA's illegal weapons programs. Ryan's face went white. That's impossible. Is it? Tell me, Agent Torres, who really authorized your placement in this investigation? Who provided the evidence against the Blackwell family? Who's been directing your reports and controlling the information you've been given? I watched Ryan's expression change as the implications hit him. Horror, realization, betrayal. The same emotions I'd been cycling through for hours. Oh dear, Uncle Marcus said with mock sympathy. I think Agent Torres is beginning to understand that he's been played just as thoroughly as you have, Emma. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What we've always wanted. For you to walk away. Renounce the inheritance, disappear quietly, let the adults handle complicated international business. Uncle Marcus stepped closer, and I could see something like genuine affection in his eyes, which somehow made it worse. Emma, your grandfather left you a poison chalice. Everything he built, everything he achieved, it was all built on secrets that could destroy governments if they came to light. And you're just going to continue his work? We're going to protect American interests the way your grandfather did, through whatever means necessary. Uncle Marcus glanced at the federal agents, who were clearly outmatched and knew it. The technology transfer tomorrow night isn't to foreign terrorists, Emma. It's to American intelligence agencies who need quantum encryption to protect operations that keep this country safe. My head was spinning with contradictory information, multiple versions of the truth that couldn't all be real. But one thing was becoming clear. Everyone in this hangar had reasons to lie to me, and I had no way to know which lies were serving which agenda. Let me ask you something, I said to the room in general. If I walk away right now, renounce the inheritance, disappear, pretend none of this ever happened, what happens to the 40,000 people who work for Blackwell Industries? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. They become casualties of national security, Uncle Marcus said finally. The legitimate parts of the company will be sold or dissolved. The employees will find other jobs. The technology will continue to serve American interests through more discreet channels. And if I try to fight this? Try to take control of the company and protect those jobs. Agent Davidson answered that one. Then you become a target of both your family and federal agencies who can't allow civilian control of classified weapons technology. And if I cooperate with the federal investigation? Then you help destroy everything your grandfather built while still going to prison for inheriting a criminal enterprise, Uncle Marcus finished. Every option led to destruction. Every choice involved betraying someone I cared about or something I believed in. The 40,000 employees, my grandfather's memory, my own freedom, the man I'd fallen for who might have been lying about everything from the beginning. I looked at Ryan, who was staring at the federal agents with growing horror as he realized how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. At Agent Davidson, who clearly saw me as nothing more than a tool to be used in whatever operation he was really running. At Uncle Marcus, who was offering me a chance to walk away from responsibility I'd never asked for. There's one thing none of you have considered, I said quietly. What's that? Uncle Marcus asked. Maybe I don't trust any of you anymore. Maybe I'm going to find my own way through this mess. I looked directly at Ryan. Maybe the only person I can count on is myself. Before anyone could respond, new alarms began sounding, not from the hangar, but from outside. Through the windows, I could see helicopters approaching, and these weren't the same vehicles that had brought us here. Who the hell is that? Agent Davidson demanded. Uncle Marcus was already barking orders into his radio, but his expression had shifted from confident control to genuine concern. And in that moment of chaos, as everyone's attention turned to the new threat approaching from the sky, I realized something that felt like the first clear thought I'd had in hours. If I was going to survive this, if I was going to protect the people counting on me, if I was going to find any version of the truth that I could live with, I was going to have to stop trusting anyone and start thinking for myself. The girl who'd inherited $5 billion was gone. In her place was someone harder, lonelier, but infinitely more dangerous. Someone who was done being anyone's pawn. The helicopters weren't military or federal. They were sleek, black, and moved with the precision of private contractors who answered to very specific interests. As they circled the hangar, I could see rappelling equipment being prepared and professionals who looked even more dangerous than the tactical team Uncle Marcus had brought. "This is going to shit fast," Agent Davidson muttered, speaking into his radio with increasing urgency. "We need immediate backup, full tactical response." But Uncle Marcus was smiling, and that expression scared me more than anything else I'd seen tonight. "Emma," he said calmly, even as his own team repositioned defensively around the hangar, "I think it's time you met the real players in this game." "What do you mean?" "Those helicopters belong to Meridian International. Private military contractors who've been paid very handsomely to ensure that Blackwell Industries' technology assets are transferred to their clients tomorrow night, regardless of what any government agencies or family members might prefer." Ryan grabbed my arm. "Emma, we need to get you out of here. Now, where exactly am I supposed to go?" I yanked free from his grip. "Every exit is covered. Every ally has been lying to me, and apparently international military contractors are coming to kill everyone in this hangar." "Not everyone," Uncle Marcus corrected. "Just anyone who might interfere with the technology transfer. You see, Emma, your grandfather made deals with very serious people. The kind of people who don't care about inheritance disputes or federal investigations or family dynamics. They care about receiving the quantum encryption technology they've already paid for." Through the hangar windows, I watched as the helicopters touched down and disgorged teams of professionals who moved like they'd done this kind of operation dozens of times before. These weren't corporate security guards or even government agents. These were people who solved problems permanently. "How much did they pay?" I asked. $15 billion. Significantly more than the inheritance your grandfather left you. Uncle Marcus checked his watch. "The transfer was supposed to happen quietly tomorrow night, but recent complications have accelerated the timeline." "What complications?" Agent Davidson answered that one, his voice tight with fear. "The federal investigation. Once Treasury started tracking Blackwell Industries' finances, it became impossible to hide the scale of the operation. Your grandfather's clients decided to collect their assets immediately before law enforcement could seize them." I looked around the hangar at the 3 different groups of armed professionals. Uncle Marcus's team, the federal agents, and now the approaching private contractors, and realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt clarifying. None of them were here to protect me. They were here to use me, eliminate me, or collect assets I supposedly controlled. Every single person in this room saw me as either a tool or an obstacle. "Where's the technology?" I asked. "What?" Uncle Marcus looked genuinely confused by the question. "The quantum encryption system everyone's fighting over. Where is it physically located?" Ryan and Agent Davidson exchanged glances. Uncle Marcus frowned. "It's not a physical device, Emma," Ryan said slowly. "It's software. Computer code, algorithms, mathematical formulas that exist as data. Data that's stored where? Multiple locations. Blackwell Industries' main servers, backup facilities, research laboratories." Uncle Marcus was studying me with new attention. "Why are you asking?" Because I was beginning to understand something that none of them had considered. The technology everyone was fighting over didn't belong to my grandfather, or the government, or international clients. It belonged to Blackwell Industries. And as of this afternoon, I owned Blackwell Industries. "Uncle Marcus, what happens if the technology is destroyed? If the data is corrupted or deleted before anyone can transfer it?" "That's impossible. There are too many backup systems, too many safeguards. But hypothetically, if it were destroyed, what happens to the $15 billion your clients paid?" Uncle Marcus's expression shifted to something like alarm. "Emma, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that everyone in this hangar is fighting over something that legally belongs to me. And I'm thinking that maybe the best way to end this war is to remove what they're fighting over." Agent Davidson stepped forward. "Ms. Blackwell, destroying classified military technology is a federal crime punishable by life imprisonment. So is running an international arms dealing network. So is manipulating federal investigations. So is attempting to murder American citizens." I looked at each of them in turn. It seems like everyone in this room is already guilty of federal crimes. What's one more? Through the windows, the private contractors had reached the hangar's exterior. I could see them setting up equipment, preparing for forced entry. We had minutes before this became a shooting war between three different groups, with me caught in the middle. Emma, Ryan said urgently, you can't be serious. If you destroy that technology, you'll have enemies you can't even imagine. Government agencies, international clients, criminal organizations. I already have all those enemies. I pulled out my phone, grateful that the hangar had cell service. The difference is, if I destroy the technology, at least I'll have removed their motivation for hunting me. It's not that simple, Uncle Marcus said. Emma, your grandfather made promises to very dangerous people. If they don't get what they paid for, then they'll be angry at a dead man instead of a living woman. I was already accessing Blackwell Industries' internal systems, using the emergency access codes my grandfather had included in his letter. $15 billion is a lot of money, but it's not worth starting a war with the US government over. What are you doing? Agent Davidson demanded. I showed them my phone screen, which displayed the main control interface for Blackwell Industries' computer networks. I'm about to delete every file, every backup, every fragment of data related to quantum encryption research. I'm going to destroy the thing you're all fighting over. Emma, no. Ryan's voice was desperate. You don't understand the consequences. I understand perfectly. I looked at him with what I hoped was calm certainty, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. The consequences are that 40,000 people get to keep their jobs, that I stop being a target, and that all of you have to find something else to fight over. The technology has legitimate applications, Agent Davidson protested. Medical research, communications infrastructure, civilian encryption. Then the researchers can develop it again. Legally this time. Under proper oversight. My finger hovered over the delete command. Without secret government contracts or international arms dealing or family members trying to murder each other. Uncle Marcus pulled out his gun. Emma, step away from the phone. Agent Davidson drew his weapon in response. Federal agents, lower your weapons. Ryan positioned himself between me and both guns. Everyone needs to calm down. No, I said quietly. Everyone needs to make a choice. Outside, the private contractors had reached the hangar doors. I could hear cutting equipment starting up, the methodical sound of professionals preparing to breach our defenses. Uncle Marcus, you can shoot me, but the moment you do, Agent Davidson will arrest you for murdering a federal witness. Agent Davidson, you can arrest me, but the technology will still be destroyed and your investigation will collapse. Ryan, you can try to stop me, but then you'll be choosing government interests over the woman you claim to love. I looked at each of them, these men who'd shaped the most terrifying night of my life through their various betrayals and manipulations. Or you can let me do what my grandfather actually wanted me to do. Not inherit his empire, not continue his work, not become another pawn in whatever game he was playing. But end it. Clean slate. Fresh start. Emma, Ryan said softly, if you do this, there's no going back. No inheritance, no company, no legacy. Just you alone with nothing. I've been alone since the moment I learned my grandfather was a criminal, my family wants me dead, and the man I was falling in love with was lying to me about everything. My voice was steadier than I felt. At least this way, I'll be alone by choice instead of by betrayal. The cutting sounds were getting louder. We had seconds before the private contractors breached the hangar, and this conversation became a firefight. Besides, I added, surprising myself with something that felt almost like a smile. Who says I'll have nothing? I may be destroying the technology, but I'm still inheriting $5 billion in legitimate assets. Enough to rebuild Blackwell Industries as something worth being proud of. Uncle Marcus lowered his gun slightly. Emma, you have no idea how to run a multinational corporation. Then I'll learn. Or I'll hire people who do know, people who aren't criminals or federal agents or international arms dealers. I looked at Ryan. People who work for me instead of lying to me. And if your grandfather's clients come after you anyway, then I'll deal with that when it happens. But at least I'll be dealing with it as myself, not as someone else's pawn. The cutting sound stopped. Through the windows, I could see the private contractors preparing for final breach. Time was up. Last chance, I said, finger poised over the delete command. Anyone who wants to stop me needs to shoot me in the next 5 seconds. Uncle Marcus hesitated. Agent Davidson looked torn between duty and pragmatism. Ryan stepped closer to me, but not to take the phone away. Emma, he said quietly, if you do this, if you choose this path, I want you to know that everything I said about falling for you is real. The mission was a lie, but my feelings weren't. I know, I said, and realized I meant it. That's the only reason I'm not including you in the list of people I never want to see again. What does that mean? Instead of answering, I pressed the delete command. Every screen in the hangar that was connected to Blackwell Industries networks flashed red. Error messages appeared as terabytes of quantum encryption research vanished into digital oblivion. Backup systems triggered, tried to restore the data, and found nothing to restore. In the space of 30 seconds, I destroyed $15 billion worth of military technology and eliminated the primary motive for everyone trying to kill me. The hangar fell silent except for alarms screaming from the network systems. Well, Uncle Marcus said finally, that's either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest. Probably both, I admitted. The hangar doors exploded inward as the private contractors breached our defenses. But instead of immediate violence, they stopped, listening to urgent radio chatter from their commanders. One of them spoke into his throat mic, then turned to his team. Mission abort. Package has been destroyed. Extraction authorized. They were gone within minutes, leaving behind confused federal agents and a family conspiracy that no longer had anything to conspire about. So, Agent Davidson said, holstering his weapon, what happens now? I looked around the hangar at the remnants of the most terrifying night of my life. At Uncle Marcus, who looked oddly proud despite having his plans destroyed. At federal agents who no longer had a case to investigate. At Ryan, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, but that felt like hope. Now, I said, I go to that board meeting tomorrow morning and take control of a company that's about to become whatever I decide to make it. Without the technology contracts, without the government connections, without any of the infrastructure your grandfather built, Uncle Marcus pointed out. Just a regular corporation with regular problems. Sounds perfect, I said. And for the first time since sitting in that lawyer's office 12 hours earlier, I actually meant it. The flight back to Chicago should have felt like victory. The private contractors were gone, the federal investigation was effectively over, and I'd eliminated the technology that had made me a target. But as I sat in the corporate jet Uncle Marcus had arranged, apparently even family conspiracies required proper transportation. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. You're brooding, Ryan observed from the seat across from me. He'd convinced Agent Davidson to let him accompany me to the board meeting, arguing that federal oversight was still necessary for the transition of corporate control. I'm thinking, I corrected. There are too many pieces that don't fit together. Uncle Marcus looked up from his tablet, where he'd been reviewing what remained of Blackwell Industries' legitimate business operations. Such as why my grandfather would build a criminal empire just to leave it to someone he knew would destroy it. I pulled out the letter he'd left me, reading it again for details I might have missed. He was too smart for this to be accidental. Maybe he was counting on you to make different choices, Ryan suggested. No. I stood up, pacing the narrow aisle of the corporate jet. Look at what he wrote. Fear will keep you alive in the coming months. You earned this not through blood, but through character. The real test starts now. He wasn't giving me a business empire to run. He was giving me a test to pass. Agent Davidson, who'd remained unusually quiet during the flight, finally spoke up. What kind of test? The kind that determines whether I'm capable of breaking a cycle instead of continuing it. I stopped pacing, pieces clicking together in my mind. Uncle Marcus, how long has the family been involved in illegal technology transfers? Your grandfather started developing government contracts about 15 years ago. The questionable activities began maybe 10 years later, when the official channels became too restrictive for what the intelligence agencies needed. And when did he start talking about changing his will? Uncle Marcus frowned. About 18 months ago, right around the time he began expressing concerns about the family's business practices. I looked at Ryan. When did the federal investigation begin? Officially? 14 months ago, when your grandfather first contacted Treasury with evidence of financial irregularities. The timeline was too convenient, too precisely orchestrated. He started the federal investigation himself. Uncle Marcus, he didn't suspect you were stealing from the company. He knew, because he set up systems that would detect it. That's impossible. Right now, I'm a man who's in love with a woman who just chose to destroy $15 billion because it was the right thing to do. His smile was small but genuine. And if you'll have me, I'd like to help you build whatever comes next. Uncle Marcus cleared his throat. Emma, I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. We underestimated you completely. We, the family, we thought you were weak, inexperienced, easy to manipulate or eliminate. We never considered that your grandfather might have chosen you precisely because you were strong enough to destroy what we'd built. I pressed continue on the video, and my grandfather's final message began. Emma, if Agent Torres is with you, and I believe he will be, then you should know that his assignment wasn't just to investigate the family. It was to find someone he could trust completely, someone whose judgment he could rely on when making the hardest decisions. I asked federal agencies to send me someone with unshakable integrity, and they sent me Ryan Torres. Ryan's eyes widened. He requested me specifically? His feelings for you aren't part of a mission, Emma. They're part of his character. I've been watching both of you for months, and I believe you'll make an extraordinary team. The video showed blueprints, research proposals, investment strategies that would transform Blackwell Industries into something unprecedented. A technology company designed to solve global problems instead of creating weapons to manage them. Your real inheritance, Emma, is the opportunity to prove that American ingenuity can build hope instead of fear, prosperity instead of poverty, connection instead of division. But only if you're willing to work with people who share your vision, including some who started as your enemies. As the jet began its descent into Chicago, I realized that everything I'd thought I understood about this night was wrong. I hadn't destroyed my inheritance, I'd activated it. I hadn't lost my family, I'd discovered which members were worth keeping. I hadn't been betrayed by Ryan. I'd found someone willing to risk everything to help me succeed. Uncle Marcus, I said as the video ended, when we land, I want you to call a family meeting. Everyone who was involved in the conspiracy, everyone who thought I was too weak to lead, everyone who underestimated what I was capable of. What are you going to tell them? That they have a choice. They can continue trying to profit from corruption, in which case they'll be arrested by Agent Davidson and his team. Or they can help me build something worth being proud of. Ryan squeezed my hand. And if they choose cooperation? Then we'll discover just how much good a reformed weapons company can do when it decides to focus on saving the world instead of threatening it. Through the jet's windows, I could see Chicago's skyline approaching, lit up against the darkness like a promise of everything that was possible. In a few hours, I'd walk into a boardroom and claim control of a company that could employ thousands of people in meaningful work, develop technology that improved lives instead of ending them, and prove that choosing integrity over profit wasn't just idealistic. It was revolutionary. Emma, Ryan said quietly, are you ready for this? I thought about the scared girl who'd sat in a lawyer's office 12 hours earlier, overwhelmed by an inheritance she didn't understand. That girl was gone, replaced by someone who'd been tested by betrayal, tempered by fear, and transformed by the choice to do what was right instead of what was profitable. I'm ready, I said, and this time I knew exactly what I was ready for. Not just to inherit my grandfather's empire, but to transform it into something the world had never seen before. A technology company with a conscience, run by someone who'd learned that the most dangerous weapon in any arsenal was the courage to choose principle over profit. The real war was just beginning. But now I knew which side I was fighting for. The Blackwell Industries boardroom looked exactly the same as it had 24 hours earlier. Polished mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, portraits of previous company leaders watching with painted eyes that seemed to judge every decision. But everything else had changed completely. I walked into the room at exactly 9 a.m., wearing the same black suit I'd put on for grandfather's funeral. But somehow it felt different now. Not like mourning clothes, but like armor. Ryan walked beside me, no longer pretending to be just a corporate lawyer, and Uncle Marcus followed with a folder containing resignation letters from every family member involved in the conspiracy. The board members, 12 people who'd been expecting to rubber stamp a family trust takeover, looked confused by the confident young woman who'd replaced yesterday's overwhelmed granddaughter. Good morning, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table where my grandfather's nameplate had been replaced with one reading Emma C. Blackwell, Chief Executive Officer. I'm sure you've all heard varying reports about last night's events. Let me clarify exactly what happened and what happens next. Board member Jonathan Hayes, a man who'd worked with my grandfather for 30 years, leaned forward. Ms. Blackwell, we understood there were questions about the inheritance structure. There were no questions. The inheritance is clear, legally sound, and effective immediately. I opened my laptop, projecting the first slide of a presentation I'd spent the pre-dawn hours preparing. What you're looking at is Blackwell Industries' new strategic direction, effective today. The slide showed the company's current structure: defense contracts, government technology transfers, classified research programs, with red lines crossing through everything that had been eliminated when I destroyed the quantum encryption data. As of last night, Blackwell Industries is out of the weapons business permanently. No more defense contracts, no more classified technology development, no more government partnerships that require security clearances or moral compromises. The boardroom erupted in shocked voices. "Emma, you can't simply eliminate 60% of our revenue," protested board member Sarah Chen. "The company will collapse. The old company would collapse. The new company will thrive." I clicked to the next slide, showing investment plans, construction schedules, and research initiatives that my grandfather had spent months developing. "We're transitioning to civilian technology, clean energy, medical research, and educational infrastructure. Instead of 40,000 employees building weapons, we'll have 100,000 employees building solutions." Ryan stood up, his federal credentials giving weight to his words. "The Department of Treasury has reviewed Ms. Blackwell's transition plan. All legal obligations will be met, all legitimate contracts will be honored, and the federal investigation has been closed with no pending charges." "What about the family members who were involved in illegal activities?" asked board member Robert Kim. Uncle Marcus answered that one. "Those family members are resigning from all corporate positions and divesting their shares. In exchange for cooperation with the transition, they'll face civil penalties rather than criminal prosecution." I looked around the table at faces that ranged from skeptical to impressed to deeply concerned. These people had built careers on the old version of Blackwell Industries, and I was asking them to help me destroy everything they knew. "I understand this is overwhelming," I said. "You're being asked to trust someone with no business experience who's proposing to revolutionize a company that's been profitable for decades. So let me be clear about what I'm offering each of you." I clicked to the next slide, showing compensation packages, equity shares, and leadership roles in the new company structure. "Stay with Blackwell Industries, help me build something unprecedented, and you'll be part of the most ambitious corporate transformation in American history. Your expertise, your relationships, your knowledge of how to manage complex operations, I need all of that. But I need it in service of a vision that your children will be proud to inherit." "And if we choose not to stay?" Jonathan Hayes asked. "Then you'll receive generous severance packages, excellent references, and my genuine gratitude for the years you've dedicated to this company." I met his eyes directly. "But you'll also miss the opportunity to prove that American businesses can lead through innovation and integrity instead of fear and force." The room fell silent as board members processed what I was proposing. Not just new leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of what Blackwell Industries could become. "Emma," Sarah Chen said slowly, "assuming we could make this transition work, and that's a massive assumption, what makes you think you can lead it? Yesterday you were a recent college graduate. Today you're proposing to reshape global technology markets." It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself since boarding the plane. But looking around the boardroom, seeing the mix of skepticism and hope in these people's faces, I realized something that surprised me. You're right. I have no experience running a multinational corporation. But I do have something that's been missing from this company for years. I have nothing to lose by doing the right thing. I stood up, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. Every person in this room has built wealth, reputation, and career success by maintaining the status quo. I'm the only person here who's willing to risk everything to change it. That's not leadership experience, Robert Kim pointed out. That's idealism. You're absolutely right. But idealism guided by the best strategic minds in corporate America, supported by unlimited resources, and implemented by people who understand how to turn vision into reality. That's not just leadership. That's revolution. Ryan joined me at the windows, and I saw several board members notice the way he looked at me. Not like a federal agent monitoring a witness, but like a partner supporting an ally. "Ms. Blackwell," Jonathan Hayes said finally, "if we agree to this transition, what guarantee do we have that you won't change your mind when the work gets difficult? When the losses mount up? When the pressure becomes overwhelming?" I turned back to face the board, and for a moment I saw myself as they must see me, young, untested, asking them to risk everything on a vision that might be impossible to achieve. But I also saw something else in their faces. Curiosity, hope, the same recognition I'd felt last night that something fundamental was shifting. You have the guarantee that I've already made the hardest choice I'll ever have to make. Last night, I chose to destroy $15 billion rather than profit from corruption. If I can walk away from that much money on principle, I think I can handle the everyday pressures of building a legitimate business. Sarah Chin smiled for the first time since I'd entered the room. That's either the most naive thing I've ever heard or the most inspiring. Probably both, I admitted. But either way, it's authentic. And authenticity is something this company hasn't had in years. Over the next 2 hours, we worked through details, concerns, and the 1,000 practical questions involved in transforming a weapons manufacturer into a force for global improvement. Some board members resigned. They couldn't reconcile their vision of business success with my commitment to ethical operations. Others stayed, intrigued by the challenge of proving that profitable and principled weren't mutually exclusive. By noon, I had a 7-person board committed to the transition, a strategic plan approved for the first phase of operations, and a company that was officially, irrevocably, permanently out of the business of creating weapons. So, Ryan said as the board members filed out to begin implementation, how does it feel to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company? Terrifying and exhilarating and completely surreal. I collapsed into my grandfather's chair, my chair now, and felt the weight of responsibility settling across my shoulders like a familiar coat. Ryan, what happens to us now? To whatever this is between us? He sat on the edge of the conference table, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. That depends on what you want to happen. I want honesty. Complete, absolute, painful honesty about everything. Your feelings, your federal obligations, your plans for the future, your concerns about getting involved with someone who just inherited responsibility for reshaping global technology markets. Okay. Ryan's smile was soft but serious. Complete honesty. I'm in love with you. Not because you're powerful or wealthy or important, but because you're someone who chose to destroy $15 billion rather than compromise your principles. I've never met anyone with that kind of integrity. Continue. My federal obligations are officially over as of this morning. The Treasury investigation is closed. I'm returning to private practice. And if you want me to stay and help you build this new version of Blackwell Industries, I'd consider it the opportunity of a lifetime. The afternoon sun was streaming through the boardroom windows, and I realized we'd been working for 5 hours straight. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm, unaware that one of its largest employers had just committed to revolutionizing how American businesses approached global responsibility. What about your concerns? I asked. My biggest concern is that you're 23 years old and you just committed to changing the world. That's a burden no one should carry alone. Ryan moved closer, his hand finding mine across the table. My second biggest concern is that falling in love during a federal investigation probably violated about 12 different professional ethics standards. And your third biggest concern? That I'm not worthy of someone brave enough to choose principle over profit when it cost her everything she thought she wanted. I looked at this man who'd started as a lie, become an ally, evolved into something that felt like love, and was now offering to help me build a future neither of us could have imagined 24 hours ago. Ryan, I need you to understand something. If you stay, if we do this together, it's not going to be normal. There will always be people who want to destroy what we're building, threats we can't predict, challenges that would have terrified the person I was yesterday. And I'm not the person I was yesterday. I'm someone who's learned that the scariest decisions are usually the ones most worth making. I stood up, moving to the windows where I could see Blackwell Industries' manufacturing facilities in the distance. Buildings that would soon be producing medical equipment instead of weapons, employing researchers focused on saving lives instead of ending them. So if you're offering to help me build something unprecedented, something that proves American businesses can lead through innovation and compassion instead of fear and force, then yes. I want you to stay. Ryan joined me at the windows, and I felt his arms slip around my waist with the natural ease of someone who belonged there. Emma, there's something else I need to tell you. More federal secrets? No. Personal truth. He turned me to face him, and I saw something in his expression that made my heart race. This morning, when you walked into that boardroom and took control of your inheritance, when you stood up to the board and outlined your vision for the future, I've never been more proud of anyone in my life. Even though you've known me for less than 24 hours? Especially because I've known you for less than 24 hours. Emma, what you accomplished last night, the strength you found, the choice you made. Most people spend their entire lives looking for one moment when they can prove who they really are. You found that moment and rose to meet it. Through the windows, I could see employees leaving the building at the end of their shifts. People who had no idea that their jobs had just been saved by a 23-year-old who'd chosen to destroy a fortune rather than profit from it. Tomorrow, they'd return to work at a company committed to building hope instead of fear. Next month, they'd be joined by thousands of new employees working on projects that could revolutionize clean energy, medical research, and global communication infrastructure. What did this story teach you about power? I asked Ryan. That real power isn't about controlling others. It's about having the courage to do what's right, even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted. And what did it teach you about love? That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections inspire you to become better than you thought possible. The sun was setting over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that made the entire city look like a promise. In the distance, construction crews were already working on the first clean energy facility that would bear the Blackwell Industries name. Tomorrow, I'd meet with researchers who were developing medical technology that could save millions of lives. Next week, I'd break ground on educational facilities that would train the next generation of ethical business leaders. Ryan, yeah, thank you for protecting me, for believing in me, for choosing to stay when you could have walked away safely. Thank you for being someone worth protecting, worth believing in, worth staying for. As we left the boardroom together, I caught my reflection in the polished mahogany table. The face looking back at me was confident, determined, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. It was the face of someone who'd learned that inheriting power was nothing compared to earning the wisdom to use it well. 24 hours ago, I'd been Emma Blackwell, overwhelmed granddaughter who'd inherited more money than she could comprehend. Tonight, I was Emma Blackwell, CEO of a company committed to proving that American businesses could change the world through innovation and integrity. The transformation was complete. The real work was just beginning, and I couldn't wait to start. What did this story teach you about the courage to choose principle over profit, even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted? About finding strength in the darkest moments and love in the most unexpected places? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or power. It's the opportunity to become someone worthy of the responsibility you've been given. Emma's journey from overwhelmed heiress to transformational leader reminds us that real courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to do what's right despite being terrified. In a world that often rewards compromise and corruption, her choice to destroy $15 billion rather than profit from weapons technology proves that integrity isn't just idealistic. It's revolutionary. What would you choose if faced with Emma's impossible decision? When everything you thought you wanted conflicts with everything you know is right, which voice do you listen to? Share your thoughts below, and remember, the most dangerous weapon in any arsenal is the courage to choose principle over profit.